We're going to go over the Adept and the functionality, what it is and what it can do, and later on we'll get more in depth with it. So, what it is not is a linear sequencer. It is a set of MIDI tools in a environment where they're all interlinked. So, there's multiple ways you can achieve outcomes. There's not a set way that we do things with the Adept. It is a sequencer, a MIDI router, an effects unit, and an all round utility that can be used in multiple ways. We have three MIDI DIN input and outputs, USB input and output, and two CB gate outputs, which can be set to any sort of CB gate format, a CB input for recording CBs or modulating input parameters, and a trigger input as well. As we see, we've got three playheads per track. Now, that means that there are sort of three subtracks within a track. Um, each playhead is completely independent with its timing, directions, and step lengths. So we can have multiple step lengths within a track. We have a joystick for navigating around, up and down, and across the pages, which we'll get to. Start and stop buttons for each of the playheads, a multi-purpose button for opening other menus, and the four encoders. Encoder 1 is for switching tracks. Encoder 2 is changing edit values. And 3 and 4 are for navigating the playhead surface. We can also zoom and add notes and delete notes with those, which we'll get to. So to add a track, we press the white button, we can choose the track type. We'll add a drum track and we'll add a modulation track. So these are the three types of tracks that we have, and we can use encoder 1 to cycle through them. Go back to track 1. We can also, in this menu, we can copy, clear, send some playhead notes to other tracks and whatnot. We can delete and remove tracks from here as well. So if we want, we can just click out and close that menu. Up here are the playhead indicators showing the direction and the speed. We can also click on them to select which one we want to plot notes to, or we can use the encoder. We can select the playhead, select the tempo to adjust. Go to 120 and we can just click out to exit that. We can mute tracks here as well. There's other areas that we can do that, but we'll get to that. So we'll set the orange playhead. We can plot notes here, draw notes. We can just delete them by running over them again. We can delete and drop notes with the encoders as well. We can zoom here as well. So we can set these different values for each step in this track page that we're on. You can see here this little icon means that there is a submenu. The text is yellow, which means we're in the top menu. Text goes blue when we're in the submenu. There's only one submenu, so there's not constant menu diving. We can get around pretty quickly. When we're in a submenu, you can see the little icon blinking, which means we can't exit. We can only navigate it. We have to exit by pressing. So within the track page, we have different things that we can set per step. We can set the length. This is all per playhead to remember. So we're on the orange playhead. We'll set it to 16. Set the swing. We can set conditions per step, when that step will fire, only if certain conditions are met. We can set the dynamics. So we'll set velocity, probability, program change or program change modes. We can also just draw things in like that for velocity. LFO modulation, so we can modulate parameters. We can modulate velocity, set the target to probability, modulate probability, CCs, whatever. Modulation is very extensive, as you'll see. You can pretty much modulate anything with anything, and on top of that, modulate it again. Cross mod, we can set a parameter such as velocity, the source on this track, to the target could be probability on another track, on track 2. So velocity will set the probability on another track. So we have this cross modulation going on. Note shift, if we have some notes, we can just shift them back and forth on the timeline if you just want to get them in the right spot. We could just clear those. So that's the track page. We'll go on to the modifier page, or we'll go to the generator page. This is where we can generate notes and patterns quickly. If we click, it'll generate a pattern. Now, when it generates a pattern, if there's something already there, it'll generate something accompanying that data. It won't just generate some random mess. So everything's sort of coherent in the way it works with itself. We can set it to be poly or mono. Set the scale, all different types of scales, densities. We have a variant system, which we'll get to, where we can do subtle changes and select next variant. So if we select another variant and click, you can see we get these subtle changes. And then we can go to variant 3, set subtle changes, variant 4, set subtle changes. So then we would go to next variant, which one we choose, and vary loop. So it'll go through and sequence those subtle variants. So it's got a sequencer arranger within that track only. And you can see as we go further down, there are other arrangers that we can use to arrange whole track states. You can set the range, play loops and rest loops. A play loop will play the loop, say 2 times, and then it'll rest 1 time. So if we have multiple tracks going, you could have this playing and then stopping for a single loop while another track plays and so on. We'll get to all this in detail later on though. We can offset those as well. The modifier system is effects that we can plot per step or globally. So there's 3 to choose from. We can have 3 on the same playhead per track. If we go into the submenu, we can select the type, which there's about 50 of them at this point of different MIDI effects. And we can set them per step. If they're set per step, we can have a different setting per step if we wish. So each step is independent of the effect that we've chosen, or we can make them global. So that effect affects the whole pattern. Play loops and rest loops again. So pattern effects will come in and out as we choose. We can modulate these parameters from a modulation source as well. Group tracks is where we can group tracks together and then they're affected as a whole rather than individual. It just makes it easier to affect different tracks together in one block. The crossplay function has many things that we use to affect the whole system. So the conductor mode, we press the white button to get into, will do things like add a call and response to patterns. We can select which tracks it will make chord progressions with, or just overall song progressions. As such, it's called the composer. The conductor will do call and responses in different modes as well, and we can set all this up in high detail, which we'll get to. Transition. This will transition project states from one project to another. So you can when you save a project, everything is saved. Every setting is saved, and projects are saved in groups of 4. So this project would have A, B, and C, different projects. They can be completely different songs, and the transition will transition A to B. So it'll do automatic key changes, tempo changes. So you can blend one project seamlessly into another project for continuous play. And we can also have tracks as well. So if we set it up to track mode, we can transition from one track to another if you wish to as well. So you could have several songs under the 12 tracks, and you could blend from one to the other using this mode, which we'll go into detail later. Crossfade. This will crossfade between each quadrant. We can set these quadrants up to anything. So they can be effects, they could be tracks, they could be outputs here up on the MIDI outs or the CV outs. So we could send one thing to another. There can be anything that we set up. The live play mode is where we would have blocks of tracks and we can just turn them on and off. So if we have some sort of arrangement that we want to play by hand, we can do it by hand. The arranger is a full arranger where each track is plotted on a grid, like in a DAW, say, and we can say how many times it loops and arrange a full set of songs in that way. All these things would also be compatible with crossfader, transition, conductor, so the conductor could be running on a full arrangement and whatever. The mixer is not only just a volume mixer, but we can set any CC to these sliders. And then we can record the sliders as we move them over loops. So then it would play back the movements that we've recorded. Project states, like I said, we save 4 at a time into blocks for the transition mode. And when we save a project, it saves every single setting that we made. This is our MIDI router. So each playhead says where it is going to the system. And we can set up modulation so this will move dynamically. So we could dynamically route in real time MIDI sources to any sort of instrument that we want. We have a manual router here where we can set our inputs and outputs. So if you've got a complex system, we can route systems here that'll merge, split, filter, all that settings we can set up however you want. And we've got a MIDI router sequencer where we can sequence each step for when we want things to go out or switch. There's an overview of the system here where we can set our CV out types. You can see here, and it shows us it shows us our version, how much storage we've got left. So that's the overview. We'll go deeper into the generator next and show what generating notes is like and what we can do with the vary loops and play loops.